Movie Lover 120 here, and I'm here with the next episode of my Star Wars movie reviews, and this review is going to be for none other than, of course, the second episode of the prequel trilogy, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. So, we all knew Phantom Menace almost made over $1 billion worldwide and became the second highest grossing movie of all time behind Titanic at the time. So eventually, George Lucas decided the next movie of this trilogy would focus on a more grown-up Anakin Skywalker and be set a decade after the Phantom Menace, where Anakin was being trained by Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Obi-Wan Kenobi was becoming a Jedi Master at the time. And there would be some kind of new threat they'd have to face. So, alright, so when this movie was released around May 16th, 2002, what were critics' reactions to it? Well, critics slightly reacted to it better than they did with Phantom Menace, but when it comes to the fans were more divided. Some often said it was the worst Star Wars movie, well, before The Last Jedi came out, and there were another half that said they thought it was better than Phantom Menace, which I disagree with. Guys, because Phantom Menace was way better than this movie. I will say that first. But, however, when it came to box office, it was still a success, but it was really, really low compared to Phantom Menace. It only made up to $653 million worldwide, and at the time before Solo, was the lowest grossing Star Wars movie. Ugh. But it was still a box office hit nonetheless, and it still made more money than Solo, which was deemed a box office flop. So with that being said, what is this movie about? Well, 10 years after the events of the Phantom Menace, a separatist movement led by Count Dooku poses new threats to the peace of the galaxy. Senator Padme Amidala returns to the Senate to vote on the creation of a clone army to assist the Jedi. Anakin Skywalker, along with his master Obi-Wan Kenobi, must find answers, while at the same time, he's assigned to protect Padme Amidala, and slowly begins to form a relationship with her, while Obi-Wan Kenobi goes off to hunt down this bounty hunter that had actually tried to kill Padme a few nights before. So there's technically two plots, one involving Anakin and Padme, and there's another involving Obi-Wan Kenobi, trying to track down the bounty hunter on his own. So I kind of like that. I like how they kind of split the three characters, gave two of them, and one of them a plot of their own, which was very nice. So with that being, well, then again, Empire Strikes Back did that. Alright, so what are my thoughts on this movie? Well, I'd say it's the third weakest. Oh wait, no. Fourth weakest. Sixth weakest. It's the weakest of the George Lucas films. My bad, forget I said that. Yeah. It's probably the one I like the least. It's not terrible, but it's not a very fun watch either. I mean, it gets kind of boring at times. There's sometimes times where I just skip some certain scenes because they just kind of drag on forever, but I don't think it's like terrible per se. It's just not really. I just don't really like it that much. It's the weakest of the George Lucas films, but I don't think this was George Lucas's fault, really. And then again, with the cornier stuff, with the cringeworthy, corny acting of this movie, it's Star Wars, guys. There's always corny moments in Star Wars. But let's get on with the good qualities. Well, there's some epic action scenes and impressive visuals for its time. The soundtrack, like John Williams, is as great as always. There's some great performances, like Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan, Ian McDiarmid as Palpatine, Natalie Portman as Padme Amidala, Temuera Morrison as Jango Fett, Boba Fett's father. And although so little of Count Dooku is established, the late actor Christopher Lee's performance is still one of the highlights. And as for Hayden Christensen, well, yeah, his acting could have used a lot of work in this movie. definitely, but he was still a pretty decent casting choice. I still think he's a great Anakin. Besides, don't worry, guys. He's definitely much better in Revenge of the Sith, the next one. So yeah. But he still gives a good performance here. Sorry. But those who despise the character in The Phantom Menace of Jar Jar Binks derived more than a little amusement to the fact that the character should be glad to hear that Jar Jar Binks actually has a minor role in this movie. So yeah, but to be fair, I don't think Jar Jar really needs much of a role in this movie anyway. I mean, they already told a story in Phantom Menace, so. Plus now C-3PO had been fully built around the time this movie had begun, so the comic relief role went back to C-3PO and R2-D2. And Obi-Wan's subplot is actually way better than the subplot between Anakin and Padme, despite a few plot holes, showing him to have some pretty good detective skills and being capable of holding his own in the fight. We get to see Yoda in action for the first time, specifically when he fights Count Dooku. I think that's probably the best fight in the whole movie. It's kind of really the only enjoyable action sequence in the whole movie to me. And then yeah, C3, and there's actually one pretty funny scene where C-3PO accidentally gets his head placed on a battle droid body and firing blaster and control. It was actually pretty funny, which is very awesome. And additionally, Kid Fisto, who smiles after force pushing him down, has become an iconic meme. Some interesting political aspects, despite much of it being boring too. The world building is excellent, especially when it comes to Kamino, Genesis, and Coruscant. And there's a little interesting fact. When Anakin's talking to Padme in front of the Lars homestead, his shadow resembles Darth Vader, which is an interesting touch and a great foreshadowment of what's about to happen soon. And the death of Anakin's mom is pretty emotional as well. And like Phantom Menace, the battle scenes are still cool, like the chase in Coruscant and the Battle of Genesis. Back to Anakin's mom. Anakin's mom will later begin his path. Believe it or not, guys, the death of Anakin's mom pretty much began his path to the backside. So, technically, it's even hinted that Palpatine or Darth Sidious actually had the Sand People kill Anakin's mom, and so that it would look like the Sand People killed her, even though technically he kind of had some secret involvement. So, when Anakin was killing that whole village, you can tell he was probably watching that whole action through some Force visions, and was probably grinning knowing his plan was going to work. To get Anakin to be his apprentice was starting to succeed. So yeah. Since he did say that in Phantom Menace, he said he'd be watching over him when he was about that small boy in Phantom Menace. It was nice to see the dark side of Anakin Skywalker too when he kills the Sand People and later gets angry. Yeah, because like I said, when he kills the Sand People, that's pretty much beginning his path to the dark side. So yeah. Now on to the bad qualities. Well, some of the characters can be kind of boring and wooden at times. I mean, despite a good performance from Christopher Lee, Count Dooku, he simply just appears without any attempt to establish precisely who he is, really. It lazily uses reverse shot in scenes, and the CGI has not really aged well and is used in situations where it isn't even needed, especially the clone troopers. Like, the clone troopers look computer animated most of the movie. Like, come on, guys. Really? Like, there's some... Instead of showing the bond between Obi-Wan and Anakin in this movie, I mean, well, yeah, they kind of show it more through, books and stuff, and they do show it a little bit before Anakin fully becomes Darth Vader in Revenge of the Sith, and considering this was supposed to be the height of their friendship, they simply talk about things they've done together off screen. In fact, sometimes they barely just seem to tolerate each other at best. With Anakin basically complaining about Obi-Wan behind his back, but technically he was in Jedi training during this all. And this was shown in Clone Wars, but this should have not been required for the film itself to make sense. Plus, keep in mind, guys, Anakin is actually more mature in the Clone Wars series, so... Yeah, and the scene of the 1950s style diner feels kind of mundane for a Star Wars movie. It's just a little odd. I mean, yeah. The romance between Anakin and Padme is kind of a bit forced. It does get really cringy at times. There's times where I'll just skip some scenes with them together because I usually like the Obi-Wan Kenobi scenes better. They're the better parts of the movie. Like, the setup to get them really together is kind of contrived. It kind of comes out of nowhere. Dialogue is just kind of chunky and bizarre. actions even contradict their own motives when Padme decides to fall for Anakin, despite him raving about wanting to become omnipotent, and revealing that he slaughtered an entire Tusken community, especially the women and the children too. And once again, Watto in this movie is still that offensive stereotype of Jews by having to grow a scraggly beard in between films. He was even given a hat as if growing a beard was not enough. The climax has virtually no stakes, and it's just armies of insects and robots fighting armies of disposable people for control of a factory that creates armies of robots used by the instincts, and also it never particularly clear as to who won the Battle of Genesis, so yeah. And like I said, the movie gets very slow. Very slow at a lot of parts. A lot of parts that really didn't need to be that slow. So yeah, all in all, for Attack of the Clones, it's the least good of the George Lucas stuff. Really. It's not the worst Star Wars movie per se, it's much better than some of the later ones that we would soon get, but yeah, I can definitely see why a lot of people seem to not really like this movie. And to be honest, I'm not a really big fan of it either. I mean, for those of you that probably do love Attack of the Clones, I respect that. I don't hate this movie, guys, just to let you know. It's an alright movie. It's still got good moments in it. I still consider it kind of canon, but for a follow-up to Phantom Menace, yeah. I'd kind of rather watch Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith over this. And the original trilogy, but I would still watch this over the Disney sequel. I would still watch Attack over the Disney sequel trilogy and Solo any day. And with that being said, that's pretty much our review for Attack of the Clones, and here's how I'm going to rank it. I am going to give Attack of the Clones a 6.5 out of 10. And there we go. We wrapped through Attack of the Clones. So now, what's the next one we're going to do? Oh, next one's my favorite of the prequel trilogy, and it was actually, believe it or not, guys, the very first Star Wars movie I saw in the theaters. Not first I saw in general. First one I saw was actually A New Hope, which you obviously all know. But this was definitely the first and only really true actual Star Wars movie I saw in the cinema when I was in second grade, and that is Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. The fourth best Star Wars movie of all time. That I cannot wait to finally get to. But yeah, anyway, that'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching. If you like this and want to see more, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Movie Lover 120.